We want to bring in former Congressman Dennis Kucinich, author of the Kucinich Report on Substack, and he's written a really fantastic new piece. I encourage all of you to read it. It's called Iran, Epstein, and Human Sacrifice. And of course, many people are calling this the Epstein administration that's carrying out these attacks. And to listen to the Iranian people, listen to the Iranian officials, they think of this as an existential fight against the pedophile regime in the United States and in Israel. Of course, Israel is one of the leading countries in the world that defends and actually openly welcomes pedophiles into its midst, as we've covered here on the show. CBS News, before Barry Weiss took over, did a whole in-depth report about Israel being really the safe haven for pedophiles. So do they have a point here? And the larger question about culture, right, which is these pedophiles, these elites don't care about you and I, and they certainly don't care about the American forces that will be killed as a result of this. They're bloodthirsty, and they don't care. I mean, Netanyahu's son is hanging out in Miami. His wife is sunning herself in Miami, having coffee on the balconies. That must be nice for the elites. Former Congressman Dennis Kucinich joins us now. Congressman, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. And you've certainly set the stage for this discussion by talking about how leaders and elites are removed from the reality that descends upon mass publics in a war, and that's one of the things that I wrote about in my Substack column was that we're really looking at a departure from what we have known as Western civilization. That we're looking at the decline of Western civilization, led by elites who legitimize child rape, child murder, cannibalism, aggressive war against whoever they choose for whatever purpose they desire. Generally goes back to some kind of greed. We're in a serious moment here in not just the history of our country, but in the history of the world. And you raised the question about what happens if Israel, in its maniacal drive towards a greater Israel, moves towards using one of the many atomic bombs they say they don't have. If Israel or the US were to drop a bomb in Pakistan or in Iran, the radiation would go to Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, throughout the Persian Gulf and the Middle East. So Israel will be bombing itself ultimately. Now, this whole idea about aggressive war needs to be met head on. But unfortunately, as you pointed out earlier, you have a uniparty. There's no real opposition. You might have a few members who might be willing to either put a resolution forward to cut off funds for this abhorrent enterprise, or B, put forth an articles of impeachment, which would authentically cite chapter and verse the constitutional violations, which are many, that have been committed by the current president. But, I don't know that anything like that will actually happen, or that the Congress as a whole will be ready to do anything, because they're complicit. Yes. They've already provided funds for over $1 trillion budget. The administration has asked for $1.5 trillion annual military appropriation in the next budget. And that is actually one of Congress's powers that is not being exercised. We're in a very dangerous moment.
Yes. I want to ask you about partisan politics, even though it kind of turns my stomach to ask it. Republicans seem to, at least the older MAGA generation, seems to have support of this war because they are buying the line about nukes and Israel's our greatest ally and all of that. But Democrats are too. John Fetterman seems to be just as excited as Lindsey Graham. Yeah, I don't see any daylight between the two of them, and I am mad as snakes about it. But then I recall that they are a uniparty when it comes to war. So can you respond about the partisan politics that just don't seem relevant anymore?
Well, just go back to July of 2025 when Netanyahu last visited Congress. He had over 50 standing ovations.
Right.
Now, how does that come about? It comes about as a result of years and years and years of interest working on behalf of the state of Israel through funding congressional campaigns, through opposing certain members of Congress who will challenge Israel's narrative. It comes about through the media's support for that narrative. It comes about as a result of there being no enforcement of international law because of the United States veto in UN at the UN. And there's this narrative about Israel being our ally. I as I write in my column, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and others have warned about foreign entanglements. And Israel right now there is absolutely no question that this attack would not have happened on Iran, would not have happened absent Israel and Israeli interests putting enormous pressure on the Trump administration and also on members of Congress who are constrained to say anything, even when over 150 little girls get killed in a bombing strike, where assassination has become a policy of the government, notwithstanding previous executive orders. We're in the thrall of this foreign interest, and it's affecting the legislative and the executive branch.
Can I take you back to 2002? Can I take you back
Sure.
to September 12th, 2002? I think you know what happened on that day when you sat across from Netanyahu in Congress. And of course, he famously responded to your question. That question, of course, has surfaced and people are sharing it all over the internet, of course. Once again, I love seeing you ask him, are there any other countries that we should be concerned about? And Netanyahu at that point turns to you and says, he snaps at you, by the way, in his condescending way. But let me finish what I'm talking about here, as if he holds court over the entire U.S. Congress even then. And he tells you that one of the main concerns is Iran. So, 24 years ago, he was telling you this. And Congress, I don't know, stood fast against it. I don't know. But what do you think has changed now in 24 years? Has Israel managed to get its teeth and claws into just about every corner of Congress, and that's what's changed?
Well, they certainly have a greater hold on Congress. There's no question about that. And they've been impactful in elections. AIPAC in particular has helped to elect or defeat members of Congress, depending on where they stand on favoring Israel. Going back to September 12, 2002, you have to remember that it was Netanyahu who came to the United States to beat the drum for war against Iraq. Mm-hmm. He helped to propel the weapons of mass destruction narrative that led the United States Congress to, in October of 2002, to pass a resolution that put us on a path to war with Iraq. That was part of Netanyahu's mission. Now with Iran, his mission has been the same for 30 years. When it comes to Iran, he's been BB1 note. Iran's could have a nuclear weapon at any time. I mean, what he would do was to conjure up this hatred towards Iran. And I would say, generally speaking, American people aren't really aware of what our government has done in Iran. They don't know about 1953, when we overthrew a democratically elected government of Mossadegh. They don't understand how we set in motion the forces that led to the 1979 Iranian Revolution. They don't understand the psychology of the Iranian people, who are not afraid. They don't understand the technological advancement of Iran, which is not a pushover like Iraq, which had 1% of the military capability of the United States, Venezuela, which really had no defense at all. This is a technologically advanced nation of 93 million people who have the capacity to fight back, and they will with everything they have. And when I spoke to Netanyahu, what was interesting, I talked to him afterwards out in the hall. In addition to what, the exchange that everyone can see on the internet, I talked to Mr. Netanyahu out in the hall. We have some mutual acquaintances from Cleveland. And so I, began with that. And then I said, look, you have all of these ambitions to go after all these countries, including Syria and Libya, Syria, and Iran. I said, why don't you do it? Why don't you do it?
Right.
And his response was, oh, no, you have to do it, you have to do it. And there is this toxic relationship that's developed between Israel and the United States, which has brought about carnage in the Middle East and has ruined any hope that America would have to try to be an honest broker of peace in the region. And we have, the equation is flipped. We've been Israel's cat's paw. And why is Netanyahu doing this right now? Because he's trying to avoid going to jail. I mean, that's the bottom line. His coalition in the Likud with Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who are as objectionable people as you will ever find involved in government at any level anywhere, came about because Netanyahu is in trouble politically in Israel, and so you take this admixture of his political troubles, of his playing with fire of the greater Israel, whether it's from the Euphrates to the Nile or wherever. And Trump's lack of understanding that he's not a king, he's a president, and that as president, he's governed by laws, and that's out the window. So you put these kind of things together, and you have the basis for a wider war.
Disaster, really.
Well, don't you hate when people say, I told you so? Yeah, that's me, actually, because I did tell you, sorry, but I told you that gold and silver were going to reap the benefits of excessive money printing, the Fed just printing money like crazy, overvalued markets, global unrest. It's here. It's happened. Gold and silver have both soared to all-time highs. So I hope you called our friends at Lear Capital and you bought some. If you didn't, trust me, it's not too late. Experts are predicting even higher prices ahead. And they get it. They know what's coming. Isn't it time, folks? Get yourself some gold and silver today. Call the best in the business. I personally use them. So does Natalie. We both do. And our kids do as well in their IRAs. Lear Capital, it's a free phone call. There's no obligation to purchase, just education information on protecting and growing your wealth with gold and silver. I'm sure there are many of you that have called and haven't purchased yet for whatever reason. Don't make the same mistake twice. Now is the time to get some gold shipped directly to you or shift some dollars in your retirement accounts over to physical gold and silver. It's easy to do. Natalie and I have done it for both, and I've been extremely satisfied with Lear's knowledge, their service, their prices. I urge you to call today and learn more. Call them, 1-800-613-3557, or go to LearRedacted.com, and you can receive up to $20,000 in free bonus medals with a qualified purchase.
Now, as you mentioned, Congress is complicit, which means that Americans who feel furious about this, like I do, don't have any way to stop it. Now, I've seen some optimists on X saying, oh, once there's ground troop casualties, Americans won't abide this. We already don't. There was no support for this war before it began, but we can't do anything, which is making me so crazy. You can hear I'm getting a little hysterical. I am a woman. I will take that point of privilege. Now, last week, the day before this war began on Friday, Gallup published a poll. And for the first time, it showed that Americans expressed more sympathies with Palestinians than Israelis. Support for Israel has plummeted, which made me think that it was now or never, because Americans would not be dragged into this going forward. But what now? What do we do now? We just sit here and watch this play out? What can we do?
Well, I think we're at a point where people have to become visible in their objections to this war. They have to demand their members of Congress take action to cut off funds. They have to demand their member of Congress start the discussion about an impeachment of the president. Now, I know that, see, here's the thing about impeachment. They don't have the votes right now. They might have the votes in the House, possibly, to render an indictment. And there's a justification for it. But they need 2/3 of the Senate. That's not going to happen right now. But the process itself is part of curtailing an administrative abuse, extreme abuse of power. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court's 2024 decision in the case of Donald Trump has given a great measure of impunity to the chief executive of the United States. And it's become ever more difficult to prosecute, not just before, but it's difficult to prosecute after someone leaves office if they've committed a grave offense against peace and humanity. The real power right now is with the Congress. Cut off funds or start the impeachment process for the purposes of pulling back the administration's use of aggressive warfare. Absent that, people have to wait till November to vote in the elections and indicate their displeasure with the administration to voting up or down certain members of Congress. But as you pointed out, we have a uniparty. And then the issues of Israel, there is not much difference between Democrats and Republicans. So, the Democrats taking over the Congress will restrain Trump somewhat in his grifting and rapaciousness. But it's not going to change things in the Middle East. And I think what will change it is that Iran is going to be responding in a way that no one has ever been able to properly anticipate to defend their country against this attack. And in their response, that will change the public opinion and the calculus of the war. That is going to be, I think, determinative about what happens when the president finally realized that he was led into a trap by Netanyahu, willfully, by the way, and by the supporters of the Zionist ambitions. He's going to understand that he has to be able to extricate himself. But by then, look, this could go on for quite a while. Once war starts, things happen. You assassinated a leader, killed 150 some, if not more, schoolgirls, little girls, bombed them. There's more carnage on the way, and 4 servicemen and perhaps women have been killed already. You're going to the administration blithely says, "Well, yeah, there's going to be more. Sorry about that." What?
Yeah.
I mean, what's at the core of this, and the link that ties it to what's happening with Epstein, is just a total disregard for human life, a total disregard for human values, no code of morality. The House of Representatives has a border above it of all the lawmakers in history, okay? Moses, Hammurabi, Napoleon, on and on. Throw all that out the window, because this group doesn't care a whit about morality, about law, about anything except megalomaniacal ambitions and grifting. And so we're in a moment now, an inflection point in human history, where everyone watching has to go out and be visible by the millions of people in objecting to this, because maybe by their very presence force the government to recognize that we're just not tolerating this. You can't murder people in our name anymore. And I think that's what it's going to take. And so this peace movement, this movement that we have to liberate ourselves from this yoke of permanent warfare, which our government in both parties has visited upon us, requires our own reflecting the power of our own hearts. And I just want to point out, talk about women feeling this. Women tend to be a little bit more connected to the earth. They their heart might be a little more connected to the heart of the earth. And I just want to share, I've been approached by not just women in my life, but, on a flight, I had a couple stewardesses come up to me, express their grave concern and their distress over what's happening. Look, people need to translate those feelings into action, nonviolent action, and challenge this administration, which has without our consent, taken America down the rabbit hole of maybe the most dangerous war that we've ever been involved in since World War II.
Well, thank you for saying that, validating my hysteria. We're not birthing your soldiers.
I hope you're right about that. I mean, the thing is, though, I think what we had, the problem with Vietnam, of course, is that so many Americans were coming home in body bags. And America has been disconnected from war because it's like going to the grocery store when you get a piece of chicken in cellophane wrap. You're disconnected from the butchering process. And Americans have for far too long been disconnected from that. We don't see it. It's sanitized. And I fear, maybe I don't have the female sensibilities here, but Congressman, I fear that that's really at the heart of this, that it won't really start to resonate with people in the United States to take to the streets and protest like they did during Vietnam until thousands of Americans end up coming home dead.
Well, I'll tell you what I see going on. You have to look at how U.S.-Israeli interests have tried to suppress dissent right from the go. No boycott laws are permitted in many places. Suppression of dissent on campuses. Even states passing laws where you can't criticize Israel. I mean, this is all part and parcel of an attempt to keep suppressing dissent. Well, I think they misread America. Really, I mean it, really. We misread America and Americans because there still resides in I think most of us this sense of freedom. And when we feel it being constricted by some amorphous, anonymous force, we rebel. And I think that has to be part of what's injected into the public response because, this is happening because of another country. Iran has not done anything to hurt the United States. I mean, people could talk about terror this, terror that, overthrowing the embassy in 1979. We have been consistently the aggressors. We started this mess. And the label of terrorist is thrown about for political convenience without any substantive effect. And Iran's defense of Palestinians is something that is not just a political statement, it's a moral statement. Why are we permitting Palestinians in Gaza to be murdered? Why are we permitting and standing by while the IDF makes sport of shooting children in the head? Why are we permitting the theft of lands under the most brutal conditions of settlers just going in and grabbing people's home, or burning it down, of seizing the land, of killing their cattle or their other livestock? This is, I mean, I follow this daily, and it is horrific.
Yes, it is.
And as the American people come to understand what their government right now represents, and how every dime that they spend, Eisenhower said it years ago, every dime they spend for the military, every dollar, every $1 million is taken away from the health, from the education, from the general welfare of the people of this country. We are in economic trouble. We have a $31 trillion debt. Our dollar is losing its value. We're finding trouble selling, getting people to invest in America. We want to expand over 80% of our domestic budget for military. Hey, America has to stop this. We have to be prepared to go in another direction. And it may not be through the political parties, but it's certainly going to be through Americans rallying to the defense of our own freedoms, because our freedom is being taken away here. They're not going to Congress to ask for this approval. Whether Congress would do it or not is beside the point. They're not getting our permission to go and bomb other nations. They're not getting our permission to put soldiers in the streets of our city, to take down the Posse Comitatus Act and send ICE in as a private army. Hey, we're at a point where Americans have to speak up. 250 years of nation experience. Well, you know what? Everything's come around. And now we have to stand up for our freedoms again. And in doing that, we may help liberate the world.
Now, you're talking about them taking our rights. The anti-war collaboration that we see online, the right and the left, who oppose this, not our leaders, but the people, can still speak, but for how long? How long do you think we still will have free speech? Because they can't have this if they need to. I've been thinking a lot lately about the Yellow Ribbon campaign that was so successful in the 1990s to get us to support a war that we might not otherwise have done. And they don't have that now. That's not going to happen again. So what is at risk here when it comes to freedom of speech and expression?
Yeah, I think the cauldron is bubbling, okay, and there'll be. I don't think that we're sunk. I still believe in the American people's capacity to respond to the outrages of their government, and as we saw in rallies around the country a couple months ago, no kings. This now is an expression of the misuse of executive power. And this gives people an opportunity. I mean, we now have to come forward. And it needs to happen soon. Because as you pointed out a moment ago, the body bags are going to start coming back. And that was one of the factors that caused the war in Vietnam to bring it to a close. But there was another thing too, and that was college campuses coming forward. Zionist interests have done everything they can to squelch dissent on campuses and to put sanctions if people start to criticize. We may see some of those walls come down. So, I still have some confidence in the innate abilities of Americans to stand up for what's right, to stand up for freedom, to stand up for humanity, to stand up for morality, just to stand up for their families and their homes and everything that's ever meant anything to any of us. So, and we're at this kind of a moment right now, just no question about it. We are at the most dangerous moment that we have been in our time because of the wanton exercise of aggression by our government. The lies are pancaked on top of each other in a way that is shameful, but but it's everything's carefully devised here. When you hear the Pentagon today saying, yeah, the head of the Joint Chiefs saying, yeah, yep, we're, war is gritty, and there's going to be more losses, and the president basically okaying the war while he's at a party at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
There's this detachment that you've spoken about, but I think they're going to get a rude awakening.
Well, I hope it doesn't come in the form of a bloody nose for the American people.
It's going to be more than that, I'll promise you. You see, Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon.
No.
And they weren't trying to develop a nuclear weapon. But I can tell you, any nation that's thinking about it now is going to move ahead and do it to try to prevent themselves from being attacked. That's another consequence of this. We trashed the START treaty with Russia. We didn't renew it. And as a result, with this attack, which we say is about stopping, one of the many prevarications is, oh, well, they're at some day they may have a nuclear weapon. Please, this will result in other nations building nuclear weapons, and we're looking at a whole new round of fear and aggression, and a lot of people killed because our leaders do not understand the limits of power, and because the elites who help support them don't care about human life at all. They're in a different world than we are. They don't understand how ordinary people live, and they could care less, frankly. And so it goes back to we the people. What is our capacity to stand up, speak out, resist this attempt to annihilate our other nations and our own? And it's time for us to stand up.
Well, I encourage everyone to read your great piece in the Kucinich report on Substack. Congressman, you're a rare voice in these times, and we really appreciate it. And I hope you're right. I hope the American people can wake up and stand up to this. Thank you so much, Congressman. Great to see you.
I believe it. Thank you. Thanks to be with both of you. Thank you.